Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a Books Beside My Bed video for you where I wrap up the last 7 days worth of reading. This is a much abbreviated week of reading because my last Books Beside My Bed video went up much later just because of things that happened over the previous weekend. So this is my reading week from the 26th until the 29th of September. And I did read a lot considering it was only 4 days worth of reading because I was on holidays. I've been trying to get through a whole bunch of things that I need to get to for projects and things like that, as well as kids' books. So my volume is up even though the days are a lot shorter. That said, there are also a whole stack of new release kids' books that I received for review that are coming out this week. So the bulk of this video is actually going to be kids' books because the majority of the adult titles I were reading were for projects that are coming out through October. So I'm going to be talking about 12 books, but there are another 6 books that I'm not talking about that you'll hear about later in the month, including at the end of this week. So they are coming. Okay, so let's talk about some of the review titles. The first one is These Little Feet by Hayley, Rawsthorne and Brian E. Stewart. This is a gorgeous picture book for very young children. This is all about babies and the amazing things that they learn to do over the first few months of their lives. I obviously requested this because at the moment I have a very vested interest in very early picture books for children because of my niece, and I thought that this would be a great one that I could then pass on to my sister as well. This is gorgeous. It is a beautiful book about having hopes and dreams for your children. And one thing I really loved about this one is at the start of the book where you can put who the book belongs to, there is a space for footprints, which I think perfectly ties in with this book. There is also Mr. Chicken Goes to Mars by Leigh Hobbs. Mr. Chicken has been around for years and years and is this very quirky character, and he's always off on adventures to different places, whether it's Australia or Paris or anywhere like that. And in this case, he's obviously going to Mars. And so he enlists the help of someone to build him a rocket. He goes on his adventure, he meets the aliens or the Martians on Mars and has a great time, but of course always realizes that there's no place like home. And it is fun and funny and quirky and is just a very typical Leigh Hobbs book, which I always enjoy. There's also a non-fiction title. This is The A to Z of Who I Could Be, 26 Athletes That Every Little Kid and Big Adult Should Know by Chloe Dalton, who is the founder of the Female Athlete Project. And this is illustrated by Kim Siu. And this is quite literally an alphabet book of female athletes, and it's amazing because you have athletes of colour, you have disabled athletes, you have people who are at the top of their field in their various sports, and so many sports are included in here. You name it, it's probably in here. And it was just a really delightful read, and I think this is a great one to have in classrooms, a great one to have for kids, particularly when sports are quite often so male dominated. So this is incredible. I absolutely loved it. And even though I am not a sports person, this was fascinating to read and to learn about so many amazing female athletes. I also had Smarty Pup 3. This one is To the Rescue, and in this one Lily and JJ are participating in a STEM challenge at school. They're creating a science project, and JJ, who is a talking dog, comes up with a little mini helicopter for himself, which turns out to come in very handy when there is a fire in town and some dogs need to be rescued from the burning building. This one is a crossover with Anh Doh's Weirdo series as well, so if you're familiar with that, this does cross over with it. It is sort of that older junior fiction style book. It is full colour, it is really fun. JJ is just a really cool talking dog character who I enjoy reading about. And then there is The Lonely Lighthouse of Elston-Fright by Reece. This is the follow-up to A Girl Called Corpse, which came out last year. This is a paranormal fantasy middle grade story. We follow Flip, who is the son of lighthouse keepers, and we have Corpse and we also have Girl, who are both ghosts. And the town of Elston-Fright is being attacked by poltergeists, who are poltergeists made of wind, and it is up to the three of them to try and stop the poltergeists from disappearing people and destroying the town. Along the way, Flip learns some secrets about his family. There's magic, there's adventure, it's fun. It's a highly enjoyable middle grade series, and I am really glad that I got to continue it. So thank you very much to Alan and Unwin for all of those titles. I'm really excited about some of the new releases that are coming out for kids in this last part of the year. I also read 2 other middle grade titles. The first one was the Bookseller's Apprentice. This one is by Amelia, Mellor, which is actually the second book in a series, and I have not read the first one, but this one I am reading for a project for a children's book prize. This is an Australian middle grade historical fantasy story. It is set in Melbourne in 1871, and we're following Billy, who is the oldest son of I think 7 or 8 children at the start of the book, and he feels very much like his family use him to take care of the other children. They are living in poverty, and so he ends up going out and getting a job as a bookseller's apprentice, which he is just thrilled about. He's 12 years old and he just wants to work with books. But there is a very sinister magician who is lurking around, who tries to make deals with people, and Billy stands up to him and says no. And so from then on, there is this power struggle between the two of them, and it results eventually in a game of riddles and magic. And I listened to this on audio, and it was a really great way to listen to the story. It is quite a long one. I enjoyed all of the characters in here and the reveals that we got along the way. And then I also read No Words by Maryam Master. Maryam Master is originally from Iran. She and her family fled to Australia when she was 9 years old, and this book was just stunning. I absolutely love this. I think it's her second book. I've not read her first one, which was shortlisted last year. This one was a notable book this year, and it is told through two perspectives. We have Hero, who is our female character, and she goes to school. She's in year 7, and she just feels like she doesn't have the courage to stand up for things a lot of the time. But there is a boy at her school called Arya, who is an Iranian refugee, which she doesn't realize at the time. She just knows that he is a boy that's come from overseas. He doesn't speak, he's mute at school. She and her best friend befriend him, and they're this little trio. And eventually she finds out that Arya has won a poetry prize, which she finds wild because she has never heard him speak. But it turns out he's an incredible poet, and when we get his perspective, we are finding out, his struggles being a refugee in Australia and what happened to him and his family, which is tragic. So content warnings for the death of a parent and also for fleeing a very dangerous situation overseas. And so together, Hero and Arya set out to grow their courage. And that involves, Hero being willing to stand up for her friends, and Arya being willing to take the risk and speak in front of people that he doesn't know. And they do it through this incredible slam poetry competition. So like this, it's a short book. It is incredibly powerful. It touches on contemporary issues of what's going on over in Iran now and has been going on for many, many years. It is so beautifully written, but have tissues handy. I loved it. And then two more books, which I originally wasn't going to talk about over here on the channel because they're picture books and they're not review copies, but I will also be talking about them on Little Bookish Teacher. So if you're interested, you can go and see my full thoughts and a specific video on these two books. Mel from a book fiend named Mel does a series where she recommends books to booktubers, and she recommended me two books by Gary Krug because she knows I'm a teacher. And they are Gary Krug books that I have not read yet for a very specific reason, because when these first came out, and I've got to find when they first released because I forgot to do that. Okay, so these came out in 1994, so I would have been in primary school at that stage. The Watertower came out in 1994 and I was in primary school at that stage. This book cover terrified the hell out of me, so I never read it. And to be honest, the book cover still terrifies me. So Mel recommended me The Watertower and its follow-up Beneath the Surface. And these two picture books are picture books for older readers. They are definitely not for younger readers because they are creepy and disturbing in a way that I cannot explain to you. We follow two boys, Bubba and Spike, who go to play at this water tower that's always been in town. So this is set in Preston, which is a place in Australia. I don't know if it's actually our Preston or if it's a different Preston, but I'm just choosing to situate it there. This water tower has sat at the top of a hill. It looks abandoned and it has fencing all the way around it, but the boys break in and they climb it and they go and play in the water at the bottom, which straight away sets my hackles up because I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going to go wrong? And all the time that the boys are playing at the water tower, the townspeople are kind of watching. They know that the boys are up at the water tower, and it just gives the sense that the town knows something that they don't. And the ending is creepy and disturbing. The illustrations in here are creepy and disturbing at times. And then the second book is set years later and Spike returns to the water tower because he has been having nightmares about it ever since, and he just doesn't know what's going on and he's trying to figure it out. So if you like picture books that are creepy, disturbing, and leave you questioning everything you think you know about what's going on in the story, these are 100% for you. I mean, these are perfect for October. So thank you, Mel, for recommending them to me. I had a great time reading them. Okay, and then we come to the last three books that I'm going to talk about in this particular video. So Quin re-released There's a Monster in the Woods, which is a queer monster romance novella. This is about Ellis, who lives in the woods and doesn't really like people. He just likes living by himself. He has a pet dog and he loves to garden and to farm. And so he's set up a very sustainable veggie garden for himself and only goes into town when he needs to get the essentials. And there are rumors in his town about a sacrifice to an old god in the woods, which he kind of dismisses as being, you know, made up until he happens to see the monster in the woods. Content warnings in here for people who don't like the death of animals. The monster is hunting an animal in the woods and does kill it. But from then on, Ellis can't get this monster out of his mind, and he realizes that the monster has seen him and has followed him and is helping him with his garden at nighttime when Ellis is asleep. And eventually Ellis confronts Styx the monster, and the two begin to find a way to communicate with one another. They fall for one another. It's very sweet, but it is also extremely steamy and was just a delightful, fun read. And I think this would also be a perfect read for October for anyone who hasn't read Faye Quin's books before. It's just a monster in the woods, small town romance novella, and I highly enjoyed it. I also had a review copy of a small town romance called I Wish I Knew Then by Jessica Peterson. This one is set in a small town, really it's an island, and it is a second chance romance between Lou and Riley. We start at the very beginning of the book in the past when they knew each other as teenagers. Lou's family is quite wealthy and Riley's mother is the housekeeper for her grandparents. And over the course of a summer, they have this romance. But of course, Riley feels like her family would not approve of him, and so their relationship is a secret. We know that at the end of this summer, they break up, and it has left a really sour taste in both of their mouths. During that summer, the two of them had shared their dreams and hopes for the future with one another. And so then we jump forward into the future. It's like 10 years later or something like that. And Louis is returning to the island after years of never having gone back there because Riley was still living there and she just didn't want to go back and deal with him. But her best friend is getting married. They're getting married on the island. And when she gets there, she realizes that Riley is the best man. And in the time between when they broke up and now, he has become incredibly successful. He owns most of the businesses on the island. He's made himself into a self-made man, essentially. So now he is a billionaire. He lives on a yacht in the marina, and they are forced to spend time together and sort of confront what happened in the past, which means her finding out some things about her family that perhaps she didn't want to know, and also confronting the fact that she's not really happy with her life. She's done everything that her family have wanted her to do and that they think will make her happy, but it's actually not made her happy, and she has to decide whether those dreams that she had as a teenager are things that she wants to pursue now as an adult. This was an interesting little book because of how many different tropes it played with and sort of put them all into a melting pot in a way that I haven't quite read them before. And then the last book that I read this week was another audiobook, All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson, which is a memoir which I've been meaning to read for a long time. This was incredibly powerful and I loved listening to the audiobook. George M. Johnson narrates the book himself, and it's a series of essays and letters on being Black, on being queer, on the intersection of those two things, on growing up, on his first experiences with sex, his relationship with his family and with friends, and it is incredibly hard-hitting. It does deal with sensitive topics, and those are outlined at the beginning of the book as well, but highly recommend. I'm so glad that I did finally get around to reading this. It's been on my to-read list for ages. I finally just got the audiobook over the break, and I'm so glad that I did. All right, so those are the books that I have read in the last couple of days. In the comments, I would love to know if you have read any of these books or if you're planning on picking any of them up. Otherwise, feel free to share something that you have been reading in the last week, or if you want to let me know that you're here but you don't want to leave a comment, feel free to leave a leaf emoji down below. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Bye everyone.